My name is Emma, and this is the tale of how I lost everything, only to discover something far more profound. The story unfolded the day after my husband, Luke, passed away. I found myself on the front porch, enveloped in a haze of sorrow, clutching my overnight bag in one hand and a bouquet of withered flowers from the hospital in the other. My eyes were swollen from tears, my hair a tangled mess after 2 sleepless nights in the hospital chair. Luke battled for hours in the emergency room following a sudden heart attack. He had just reached the age of 36. I delved into my bag in search of the house key. My fingers quivered as I inserted it into the lock, yet it refused to turn. I scowled and made another attempt. Silence prevails. I inhaled deeply, brushed my hand against my jeans, and attempted to use the spare key. Nothing yet. My heart began to race, and this time it wasn't from sorrow. I recognized this lock. For 4 years, it had been a part of my daily life, and now it felt as though I no longer belonged here. At that moment, I observed something unusual. Peering through the living room window, my gaze fell upon a collection of boxes. Cardboard boxes, a suitcase, a collection of pink velvet cushions that didn't belong to me. I leaned in closer to the glass, eager for a clearer view, and then they came into sight. Karen, the mother of Luke, was present indoors. Luke's sister, Stephanie, was also included. They were unpacking boxes as if they were settling in, sharing laughter, sipping tea from my cherished mugs. My mind whirled. I rapped on the door. No response. I pounded on the door with increasing intensity. At last, the door swung open, revealing Karen, her arms crossed defiantly, a smug smile playing on her lips. "Emma," she remarked, tilting her head. "I didn't anticipate your arrival this early." "What's happening?" I inquired, taking a step closer. "What is preventing me from opening the door? What brings you here?" Karen remained still. Instead, she rested her shoulder against the doorframe, as if this were merely a trivial annoyance. "Since you no longer reside here," she stated matter-of-factly. "This house was purchased by my son, and now that he is no longer here, it rightfully belongs to his true family. Feel free to go." I stared at her in disbelief. I was convinced I had misunderstood. I am his wife," I stammered. "This house was purchased by us together." "What are you referring to?" Karen let out a derisive laugh. "Oh, come on. You entered into marriage without a prenup, without employment, and without kids. Your input was absent. Luke settled the mortgage payment. All of this belongs to him, and with his departure, it comes back to us. This place is no longer for you." Her voice carried a serene, almost joyful quality. Chills coursed through my veins. Stephanie emerged from behind her, balancing a tower of plates from our kitchen. "You left the door unlocked at the hospital," she remarked, a playful smirk dancing on her lips. "We have officially settled into our new place. We assumed it wouldn't be an issue for you." Something within me shattered. I erupted in laughter. A laugh that springs forth from sheer incredulity. Karen squinted her eyes in suspicion. "What's amusing?" I composed myself, brushed away a tear. I could no longer discern whether it stemmed from laughter or sorrow, and remarked, "You're arranging your little trinkets in a home you believe is yours. However, let me share something with you, Karen." I leaned in, my voice calm and measured. "The house belonged to me." Karen's smirk wavered. 2 years ago, when Luke's credit was damaged from those unsuccessful investments you encouraged him to make, I persevered. I completed the refinancing of the house under my name. Have all mortgage payments been made since that time? Originated from my account. Luke was on the mend. I embraced a full-time role and kept everything running smoothly here. Karen's jaw tightened. She pivoted, visibly searching for the right words to say. I persevered. I didn't want to bring this up during the funeral. I never intended to become that individual. But at this moment? You altered my locks. You intruded into my residence. It seems you're settling in as if this is your domain. Stephanie set the plates aside, her cheeks flushing with color. That is not accurate. He mentioned that he informed us. What he shared with you is irrelevant. I lost my composure. This house is officially registered under my name. And the reality that you're present without consent? You are crossing boundaries that you shouldn't be. Karen's complexion had turned ashen. You're just pretending. Am I? I retrieved my phone and started to dial. Should we consider the police's perspective? Karen grabbed her handbag, shouting for Stephanie. Our journey is far from over, Emma. She let out a sharp hiss. This home ought to have remained within the family. Luke was overly lenient with you. I took a step back, observing them rush out like kids caught in the act of snatching sweets. There I was, standing on the porch of my own home, the key still ineffective in the lock. Heart shattered, yet oddly, inspired. They believed I was fragile. I felt completely drained of any will to continue. Yet, they remained oblivious to the person I had transformed into while they were caught up in their own illusions of my insignificance. This is merely the start. That night, sleep eluded me. Despite the new locks and the house finally enveloped in silence, my thoughts remained restless. Whenever I shut my eyes, Karen's face appeared before me. Self-satisfied. Chilly. Victorious. Her words resonated with a dissonant hum. This place is no longer your home. The sheer boldness of it. The harshness. Luke had been away for just a single day, and his family had already begun to wipe me from their memories. Not solely from the residence. From his experiences. The essence of our existence. I rose before the dawn, brewed a cup of coffee that went untouched, and settled at the kitchen table, gazing at the vacant chair that once held Luke. He consistently sprinkled cinnamon into his cup. I have always found it unappealing. Yet, I went ahead and purchased it solely for him. The jar lingered on the counter, remaining undisturbed. With the dawn's gentle glow filtering through the window, I arrived at a resolution. I had no intention of shedding tears today. I refused to allow Karen to take anything else from me. That morning, I reached out to the funeral home. Hello, I'm Emma Walker, I mentioned. I'm looking to adjust the guest list for Luke's memorial service. A moment of silence lingered. Of course, madam. What modifications would you prefer to implement? I released my breath gradually. His mother and sister are no longer invited. I ended the call before I had the chance to doubt my decision. Later that day, I stepped into Luke's office. A cramped space tucked away at the rear of the house, cluttered with haphazard piles of receipts, books, and unopened correspondence. I hadn't stepped foot in here since my time at the hospital. Everywhere I turned, his scent lingered in the air. A subtle hint of cologne, the scent of printer ink, and that peculiar citrus candle he swore by for concentration. I had to locate some documents. I'm looking for insights into why Karen believed she had a right to this house. Her words flowed with such assurance, as if she possessed knowledge beyond my grasp. And then it came into view. A modest file folder rests on the desk, its label penned in Luke's distinctive handwriting. Marriage contract? Please keep this item. I gazed at it, perplexed. Luke and I didn't put a prenup in place. Well, I certainly didn't believe we had. My hands quivered with anticipation as I opened the folder. Within were numerous pages, inscribed on formal letterhead, dated merely a week prior to our wedding 3 years back. My name is known. The name of Luke. Legal terminology that eludes my complete comprehension. And a single line, marked in bright yellow. Upon my passing, all assets held jointly, including property, will be entirely transferred to my spouse, Emma Walker, unless specified differently in a last will and testament. I blinked. This was not a prenuptial agreement. It was an agreement made after the wedding. A financial agreement that Luke needs to have prepared following our marriage. There was a secret he kept from me. And nestled behind it was a handwritten note. Should Karen ever attempt anything, you're aware of her nature. Hold on to this. I exhaled a breath I hadn't known I was holding and chuckled softly. Gently, with a touch of sorrow. Certainly, he was aware. Naturally, he had made all the necessary preparations. Luke had always been the one to maintain harmony between us, constantly urging me to extend her understanding. That her intentions were good. She's simply afraid of relinquishing control. Yet, beneath the surface, he was aware that she would attempt something like this. I rose to my feet and made my way back to the entrance. For the first time since his passing, I experienced an emotion that had eluded me for days. Strength. The following afternoon, the doorbell chimed. It was no shock to find Karen there, clad in black. Sunglasses perched on my nose, despite the overcast sky. A man in a gray suit stood beside her, clipboard in hand. Emma, she stated with a lack of emotion. This is Mr. Langley, the attorney representing my family. Let's delve into the upcoming actions regarding the house. The door remained closed, untouched by my hand. What are the upcoming actions? I inquired, my tone steady. Karen acknowledged with a subtle nod, as though engaged in a gathering of courteous strangers. Luke did not leave a will. This indicates that his estate is subject to legal distribution. As his closest relative, we are entitled to pursue what is rightfully his. And to us all. I inclined my head. Are you referring to me? His spouse? His lawful partner? Karen's lips quivered slightly. I inhaled deeply. I'm truly delighted that you decided to join us. It spares me the journey. I moved away from the door, returning with the postnup in one hand and the deed in the other. Would you like to see the section that mentions my inheritance of everything? I inquired, maintaining a steady tone. Or should I reach out to my attorney and have her clarify it for you in a courtroom setting? Karen's attorney requested the documents, but I decided to withhold them. I informed you that your copy would be available once you obtained it through the proper channels, and then I secured the screen door. And until that time, please refrain from stepping onto my porch. Karen's expression shifted, just a fraction, but it was significant. She was aware. She was defeated. In silence, they turned and made their way back to the car. For the first time since Luke's passing, a smile graced my lips. Little did I realize that Karen still had more in store. Far from it. The days following that encounter with Karen were serene. Disquietingly so. Surprises at the door are a thing of the past. No correspondence. Absolutely no calls after hours. A part of me clung to the naive hope that she had at last embraced the reality. That she had returned to her own wretched existence, allowing me to grieve in solitude. Yet, a different part of me was aware of the truth. Karen stood her ground. She gathered herself once more. Yet, I endeavored to restore a semblance of normalcy. I dedicated a significant portion of my time sifting through Luke's belongings. Gathering a selection of his garments. Arranging the documents in his workspace. Every drawer I opened seemed to unveil another layer of sorrow. One morning, I stumbled upon his old camera bag hidden away in the depths of our closet. Within lay a multitude of memory cards. A few of those are from our honeymoon. Experiences from spontaneous journeys or leisurely days spent in the garden. I dedicated the entire day to sifting through them, a bittersweet smile gracing my face as tears welled up in my eyes. That evening, I filled a glass with wine, ignited one of Luke's cherished candles, and settled onto the porch as the sun gracefully descended behind the trees. For a brief instant, a sense of tranquility washed over me. Suddenly, my gaze was drawn to the envelope protruding from the mailbox. No mark. No location provided. I surveyed my surroundings. The street lay desolate. I unwrapped it with great caution. Dear Sir or Madam, we wish to bring to your attention that a formal petition has been submitted to the County Probate Court by Karen Blake, the mother of the deceased Luke Walker, contesting the validity of the property transfer involving Mr. and Mrs. Walker. The petitioner claims that factors such as undue influence, mental distress, and coercion could have influenced the postnuptial agreement. A hearing has been arranged. The letter slipped from my grasp. She was heading to the courtroom. In spite of the action. In spite of the signed agreement. In spite of Luke's note. What's even more frustrating? She claimed that I was manipulating him. I promptly reached out to my attorney, Angela. Her voice remained steady, as it always did. Excessively tranquil. I sensed she would do something like this. Angela remarked, "It's merely noise, Emma." With the deed, the contract, and evidence of his mental competence at that moment, victory is within our grasp. She claims I'm using coercion. I spoke, my voice trembling. Angela took a moment to stop and reflect. I understand. And I understand it seems like it's directed at you. Due to its intimate nature. However, she shows no inclination towards the truth. She seeks authority. I feel the urge to battle. I murmured. I seek to bring about her downfall. Angela's tone changed. Excellent. Yet, we approach it with intelligence. Silence is golden. You fail to make contact. I will take care of the court proceedings. I ended the call and remained in the shadows for what felt like an eternity, gripping that letter as if it were a creature ready to strike. Just 2 days later, another unexpected twist awaited me. This one arrived without an envelope. A text message arrived from James, who used to be Luke's business partner. "Hey, I didn't mean to intrude, but Karen reached out to me. She mentioned that you may have influenced Luke to move the house transfer along. I understand that's not accurate, yet she's requesting emails, medical records, and anything else to demonstrate his mental unfitness." I gazed at the screen, utterly bewildered. It had been more than a year since I last spoke to James. Not since Luke departed from the company following the onset of his heart issues. They had separated amicably, yet now Karen was unmistakably pulling everyone into this, searching for anything she could manipulate. "Have you shared anything with her?" I responded. A handful of dots emerged. Subsequently. Negative. However, Emma brought up something regarding Luke's most recent investor meeting. He mentioned feeling bewildered and absent-minded. She is constructing an argument. That's when the tightness in my chest morphed into a heavy sense of foreboding. I understood exactly what Karen was referring to. One morning, just months before Luke's passing, he returned home from a client meeting, his face pale and his demeanor shaken. He found himself unable to recall the location of his parked vehicle. He couldn't recall the name of the client he had just conversed with. He attributed it to stress. He mentioned that his sleep had been quite restless lately. What if it had been something deeper? What if Karen had discovered the truth? What if she possessed medical records? I remained motionless in the center of the kitchen, clutching my phone, my heart racing. If she could persuade the court that Luke was not thinking clearly, even if it was merely circumstantial, she might have the chance to untangle it all. And then it struck me with the force of a gut-wrenching blow. Luke had consulted a neurologist. He had no desire for my company on this journey. Claimed it was likely insignificant. What if that appointment was the crucial turning point for everything? I hurried to his office and pulled open each drawer with urgency. Documents, directories, packages. I sifted through everything until I discovered it. A sealed correspondence from St. Michael's Neurology. I tore it apart. "Dear Mr. Walker, we are delighted to share that the results of your recent cognitive assessment are within the normal range. No indications of early cognitive decline were observed." I exhaled deeply, the sound teetering on the edge of a sob. He had been fine. At this moment, I possessed undeniable evidence. I held the letter close to my heart, as if it were my only hope. Because Karen had just announced a fierce battle. At last, I found the strength to stand my ground. The day of the hearing dawned dull and still, as if the very atmosphere was pausing in anticipation. I stood before the courthouse, dressed in black and wearing flats, gripping my bag tightly as if it held the power to shield me. Within, I found all that I required. The act. The postnuptial agreement. Luke's letter regarding neurology. and just the right amount of fury to keep me on my feet. Angela encountered me on the steps. "Are you prepared?" she inquired softly. I acknowledged with a nod. "She's definitely going to deceive, isn't she?" Angela offered me a constrained smile. "Indeed, without a doubt. However, deceit has a short lifespan in a courtroom." We stepped inside. Karen occupied the front row, accompanied by her attorney, Mr. Langley. Her expression was a masterpiece of performance. Clad in sorrow. Enveloped in a veil of black lace. With a tissue held dramatically in her grasp. Stephanie sat beside her, gaze lowered as if embodying the sorrow of a devoted daughter in grief. Not a single glance was cast in my direction. Yet, that was of no consequence. I was absent for them. I came for Luke. For the existence we crafted side by side. And the future she sought to tear from me, fragment by fragment. The session was short. Angela put forth the deed, the notarized postnup, and the medical letter from Luke's neurologist. As Mr. Langley attempted to assert that Luke had acted under duress, Angela posed a straightforward question. "Is there any documentation available that backs up that assertion?" He did not. By the conclusion of the session, even the judge appeared to be quite vexed. He stated with conviction that he found no reason to challenge the legality of the property transfer. "This residence is officially owned by Mrs. Emma Walker. The case has been dismissed." And just like that, it came to an end. At least, that was my assumption. As I ventured into the open air, Karen trailed behind me. "You might have claimed the house," she spat, the facade of sorrow shattering before my eyes. "Yet, you cannot make me disappear. I am his mother. I did not erase you." I spoke without looking back. "You brought this upon yourself." She came to a halt. "What does that imply?" I pivoted gradually. "Tomorrow is the day of Luke's funeral. Your presence is not requested." Her expression contorted. "No one can prevent me from attending my son's funeral." I maintained her gaze. "I have already completed that. I reached out to the funeral home the morning following your decision to change my locks. You are not on the guest list. If you decide to attend, they will guide you out." "You spiteful little." "Negative," I interjected. My voice is soft and serene. "You have no right to label me in any way. Not after your actions. You attempted to take what is rightfully mine. You disseminated falsehoods about me during the court proceedings. And, most troubling of all, you attempted to exploit his death as a means to gain leverage." She parted her lips, yet I silenced her before a word could escape. "Luke would prefer your absence. I have included it. And you are aware of it." I pivoted and strode away before she had a chance to reply. Yet, that night, slumber eluded me. Not from a sense of obligation. Yet trepidation. Because Karen didn't accept defeat with poise. She fought until the very end. The morning of the funeral arrived with overwhelming force. Unexpected and chilling. I rose with the dawn, slipping into the black dress I had donned for Luke's court hearing, and approached the guest list once more to verify my details. Karen and Stephanie were absent from it. The service was set for noon. By 10, guests had started to gather at the chapel. Companions, associates, and some far-off kin I hadn't encountered in ages. They approached with gentle smiles and warm words, resting their hands on my shoulder, expressing how deeply Luke had touched their lives. "He always spoke of you," one woman remarked, placing a hand over her heart. "He always claimed you were the greatest thing that ever entered his life." I nodded, forcing the lump in my throat down. "Thank you very much." By 11:45, the chapel was completely filled with attendees. Other than the two at the very back. I spotted them right away. Karen and Stephanie. They had arrived regardless. They did not appear on the list of invitees. Access to the doors was not meant for them. Yet, there they stood. Adorned in the elegance of Dawn's majesty. Expressions trapped behind a facade of calm, I remained motionless at the entrance of the chapel, my heart pounding in my chest. Angela, arriving as a companion, gently placed her hand on my arm. "Would you like me to take care of it?" I gently shook my head. "Sure, I'll take care of it." I made my way down the aisle, the atmosphere shifting to a hushed stillness as every gaze turned in my direction. Karen glanced up as I neared, her jaw clenched. "This is not your place," I murmured. Karen crossed her arms. "I have no intention of departing." "In that case, I shall proceed." Her eyes widened in astonishment. "I will leave immediately, and I will bring the minister along with me. The funeral will be held at a different location. A serene park, the inviting backyard." "I'm indifferent. However, I refuse to allow you to remain here and feign the role of a grieving mother when your true concern lies solely in what you feel you have missed out on." Karen rose suddenly. Just as she was about to utter a word, Stephanie grasped her arm. "Mother," she murmured. "Let us proceed." Karen gazed at her, bewildered. Stephanie averted her gaze and rose to her feet, her eyes fixed on the ground. After a lengthy silence, Karen trailed behind, simmering quietly as they exited the chapel. The door clicked shut behind them, and at last, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The minister started his address, and I bid farewell to the man I cherished, enveloped by those who truly understood the essence of love. The day following the funeral, the house was silent, yet far from serene. It was unsettlingly silent, as if the walls were holding their breath, anticipating an event to unfold. I perched on the edge of the bed, clad in black, gazing at the vacant space beside me where Luke once lay. The fragrance of him remained subtly on the pillow. It seemed as though he could stroll in at any moment, coffee in hand, softly humming that off-key tune he always created when he believed I wasn't paying attention. Yet he refused. He was truly absent. In his absence, what lingered was nothing but the mark he left behind. And the chaos his mother had attempted to conjure in the darkness. The verdict was delivered in my favor by the court. Karen found herself ejected from the funeral. Stephanie didn't even glance my way. Yet, I was aware that it was unwise to think it had come to an end. Individuals such as Karen didn't simply walk away. They lingered in anticipation. And then they returned to the beginning. As I spotted her car parked across the street that morning, the engine silent, the window slightly ajar to let out the smoke from her cigarette. I found it predictable. I walked onto the porch, coffee in hand, and locked eyes with her until she tossed her cigarette out the window and sped off. She lacked the bravery to confront me face to face once more. In the coming weeks, I dedicated myself to the task of clearing out Luke's office, meticulously addressing each room and every item. With every drawer I pulled open, a fresh tide of memories washed over me. The timepiece he wore. A collection of vintage business cards. A snapshot of us by the lake, a moment before life took a turn. Yet, it was no longer merely sorrow that enveloped me. It was sheer resolve. Karen had attempted to take away everything from me. My sanctuary. The perception others have of me. Even my right to grieve for the man I cherished. She believed I would crumble. She believed I would slink away and vanish into thin air. Instead, I chose a different path. I began my excavation. In the backyard, a place where Luke had long envisioned cultivating a garden. He frequently discussed it. Typically while browsing through seed catalogs or gesturing at YouTube videos about composting. It had always been his aspiration. Yet, I had overlooked it. Perpetually occupied. Perpetually suggesting, perhaps the following season. Yet, the garden was on the brink of flourishing. And it was destined to flourish under his name. Each morning prior to my workday, I tended to the garden, uprooting weeds, aerating the soil, and sowing seeds of vegetables and wildflowers in neat rows. I toiled quietly, allowing the ground to soothe my spirit. I observed the initial hints of vitality starting to emerge. Emerging signs of growth. New beginnings. A vow of exquisite allure. It transformed into my refuge. My creative outlet. One day, as I tended to the flower bed, I noticed an envelope hidden beneath the welcome mat by the door. No return address provided. I lifted it, fully aware of the sender's identity. Within lay a solitary sheet of paper. No need for an apology. No recognition. Only 6 words, typed in a striking, bold font. This house shall forever belong to me. I perused it once, then chuckled. Not with bitterness, but with a gentle touch. Nearly with a sense of release. Karen found herself utterly depleted. There is no legal basis. There is no power. Merely expressions. She was unable to approach me. The restraining order that Angela assisted me in filing had ensured that outcome. Yet, she still had to assert her presence. Like a specter gently rapping on the window, yearning to evoke the memory of her presence. Yet, I found myself no longer afraid of ghosts. I entered the house with a sense of tranquility, retrieved the letter, and repurposed it as mulch for the garden bed. Embedded it firmly into the earth where the marigolds were just starting to blossom. Luke would have found the symbolism quite meaningful. Time slipped away. The house gradually ceased to evoke a sense of haunting. The walls exhaled once more. The corridor was now filled not with sorrow, but with the gentle resonance of recovery. The guest room has been painted. The curtains have been changed. I finally planted herbs in the kitchen window, just as I always promised I would. I was no longer merely existing. I was taking back what was mine. One evening in early spring, I found myself in the garden, the sky radiating a soft pink hue above, and I came to the realization that I was no longer in a state of waiting. Not suitable for her. Not for discomfort. Once more, I found myself alive, with Luke perpetually occupying my mind. And that was the ultimate act of retribution.